All right, so you got two options, get it low or get it high. So when you run high, you want lift out of your bait. Well, what does that mean? When I move this handle, the bait should naturally just want to come to the top of the water, okay? Vibration is more. So the more of a violent vibration you have, that's going to create lift, it's going to slow the bait down, and it's going to just make it easier to keep that bait up higher in the water column where you want it to be, okay? It's a harder hitting bait. You know, some bladed jigs out there don't hardly vibrate at all, okay? And then you got some that they'll jar the teeth out of your head. They vibrate so much, okay? And so I got an example of this bait, one that I like to use. The original Z-Man, the original ChatterBait is a great example of this, but this bait right here, I'm gonna sound like an old timer. They don't make these anymore. But this is a Bass Pro branded bait that Z-Man made for them back in the 2000s. And what's so cool about this bait, and if y'all got any of those, let me know. I'll give you $10 for them at least. But what's so cool about this bait, the head design is that kind of that arcy-style head, and it's directly on the eyelet to the blade. But what I like about it, is see that hook, it's a long shank hook, okay? Well, what does that matter? The bait automatically runs high. If you didn't put a trailer on this bait, it runs really high naturally. But when you add a trailer and you got all that shank to work with, that's just like a big rudder, okay? And so picture this, if that was a ½ an inch shorter, that trailer would be kind of wagging around more, creating more drag, okay? But because I've got that long shank like that, that's a lot of that trailer is sitting on the hook except for the very end of it, okay? So that's gonna really help me achieve my goal of keeping that bait high, okay? And so this is the example, old Bass Pro Shops or the original, okay? There's probably a bait in your head that you're thinking of right now that, yeah, now that he says that one chatterbait I've got runs high all the time, okay? I'm not gonna throw this bait if the fish are sitting on bottom in 5 foot of water, okay? I'm just not gonna do it, all right? So what about trailers for this bait? We want a trailer that's gonna promote lift and that has some drag, okay? So, hey, I know we just got married. Add more stuff to the back of that car. I don't even want to be able to put it in drive. I want so much back there. Flappers on a crawl, okay? That's a good example. You want things that are slowing that bait down, okay? Because if the bait is getting slowed down, it's automatically going to be lifting up, okay? And I know that's kind of backwards thinking, because if you think, well, if I reel my Cinco slower, it goes to the bottom. Well, that's not the same with a chatterbait, okay? A chatterbait, if it's designed like this and you got the right trailer, when you reel it slow, it's still going to rise and come up, and you'll be able to keep it up where you want it, all right? So sizes, 3/8, okay? Maybe half if it was like some extremely muddy water and you just really wanted more of a bulk and a weight to it. But I've got some halves of this particular bait, and I can count on one hand how many fish I've caught on them. I just don't, it's a confidence thing. I just don't really like it. But that 3/8, that's a good size if you want your bait to run high, okay? And so with that long shank on there, the right trailer, speed crawl, that's a great option. It's got all that meat in the middle, but those flappers on the end, okay? And those flappers are just slowing that bait down. Yama crawl, That's by Yamamoto. That has a floating material, okay? So like Maddie's talking about with them glide baits and that styrofoam, I mean, if you can put floating material on your bait that you're wanting to run high, that's all coming together to help you achieve your goal, okay? So if you get a soft plastics that's a floating formula, that's great, because that's gonna add more buoyancy to what you're trying to do, okay? Your rod needs to match your surroundings. And when I say that, what are you fishing? What kind of cover? Are you on Santee Cooper where there's cypress trees overhead and you're literally like, you know, moving limbs out of the way and skipping and flipping? Are you doing hand-to-hand combat, okay, with these fish? That's where I'm gonna want a shorter rod, okay? Because when I'm fishing like this, when I'm wanting a chatterbait to run high and slow and a harder hitting bait, it's gonna be a visual thing. I'm fishing some kind of tree, dock, cover, lay down, grass that's almost matted, okay? So I want a shorter and a heavier action for that, okay? I'm not making these bomb long casts that are 120 foot to that wintering school. I'm not doing that. Man, I'm fishing this cypress tree that's here to that tripod, okay? So 7 foot rod, maybe a 7.3, something like that. A TFO option, that's kind of their price point rod. I love that rod, and a 7 foot medium heavy fast for this, because it's just kind of this is a rod that's just rugged, it's tough. It's not a rocket science type of a rod, but fishing will be visible, okay? If that fish comes up and gets it, I'm probably gonna see him with my eyeballs, right? I'm not talking about seeing him on active target, I'm talking about seeing him with my eyeballs, because I'm visually throwing past this dock or tree, and I'm winding that bait high, and I'm watching that bait, okay? So that's similar to frog fishing. That's similar to throwing a plopper, right? I don't need some rod that's just super sensitive and dialed in for that, because it's visual, all right? And so I'll tell you another thing, inches per handle turn, that's what that fancy term is there, high IPHT. So yes, theoretically, a bait caster that has a 7-to-1 gear ratio or an 8-to-1, it should have high inches per handle turn, but it's gonna go back to the spool size and the ratio. And so a good way to test is, you know, you can get 2 different 8-to-1 reels, and this is a test that I like to show people. You know, they say, man, it just seems like you can kind of cover more water and move your bait faster. I'll tell them, say, well, hey, put your bait down on the back deck of the boat and tighten up your line and make 1 handle turn, okay? And we'll see how far that bait travels. Well, on a full spool, a line, that's what you call inches per handle turn. So that's what happens and how much my bait is moving when I make that 1 turn, okay? So if I want this bait to be running high above all the cover and where I can see it, because the fish are wanting to feed up, I don't want a 5.3-to-1 where I'm like working myself to death, okay? I want a reel that's gonna be at least 7-to-1. Sometimes I'll use an 8-to-1, but it's gonna help me to get that bait to do what I want to do, okay?